when you think about media today and the exposure of the web, brands have been so much more dominant in our lives. But I think a lot of times we don't realize that brands compete for our hearts, they compete for our minds and our attention. And so my heart in this study is that we would look into the scripture and see what God's heart for us is in understanding the competition of the world for our hearts. When you see Rolex, a lot of times people want Rolex and they think, oh, if I have a Rolex, I feel, oh, I'm wealthy, I'm elite. You know, there's this capturing of our heart, this affection with that brand. Instagram, how many followers do you have on Instagram? Today that's the big thing. How many followers do you have? So these brands start to compete for our heart and for our mind. And I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. This isn't to come down on anybody. It's to have wisdom. It's to speak wisdom that as the people of God, as we walk in this world, there are things that compete for our heart and for our minds. And if we're not sensitive, if we're not cautious to that, they can take more of a precedence in our life than we should allow them to take. It's funny because I was with my son and he's really into shoes. And we're talking about shoes and he's, you know, there's these Yeezy shoes, you know, and people pay like $400 for these shoes. I've got 5 kids. This is my oldest. He goes, no, look at this. People finance shoes. People are making payments on tennis shoes. Help me out. How are you going to finance a shoe for 12 months or 24 months? This is crazy. But if that doesn't tell you that society is doing a good job at indoctrinating people to buy into this brand that, oh, I'm cool now. Oh, I have the current thing that people that don't have the money to buy it cash will make payments on tennis shoes because it's the cool thing. The lust, the lust of the flesh and the pride of life. Pride of life means that we identify that, hey, if I have this, I'm somebody or I'm more accomplished. And we can have nice things, right? But God doesn't want our hearts to be yielded to those things. We should never have anything in our life that we wouldn't be okay giving it away as far as a material thing, right? We shouldn't have an emotional connection to those things because they're just things, right? Mm-hmm. And so now our culture's kind of shifting, and it's not just about buying the brand, but now society is saying, be the brand. Don't just consume and buy the brand, but be the brand. So the scripture says, do not conform to the pattern of this world. Right? And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because if I ask a Christian, excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma'am, how many people have you led to Jesus? How many people have you, led into a saving relationship with Jesus and then helped them to follow after Jesus? Do you know it's uncomfortable to ask Christians that? It's kind of like you shouldn't ask, what it makes people feel uncomfortable. But we know that we have 345 followers on Instagram, but it's not okay to ask about how many people have you led to follow Jesus. Is that heavy? Why is it okay now to collect followers, but it's not okay to tell people about how to follow Jesus? Colossians 3 verse 1, it says, since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above where Christ is seated, at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things, for you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. That word hidden means to escape notice. So it says that when we come to Jesus and we get saved, that our life is supposed to be hidden. Why? It's not supposed to be about us. It's supposed to be about Him. So it says, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Clothing ourselves with the things of God. That when people would see us, they would see Jesus. They would see somebody who's walking in peace and in kindness and goodness, that we would wear Jesus in our life and people would see that. They wouldn't see the brand or the logo, but they would see a person that is fully dedicated to the Lord. So we talked about brands. We talked about brands being shiny, attracting our attention, our hearts, our minds, all of those things. But did Jesus leave us a brand? Just consider, what do you think His brand was that He left us? That's Jesus' brand. That's His shiny brand that He left us. What's attractive about that brand? Nothing. But what does that brand tell us? That brand tells us that He loves us, that He sacrificed for us, that He went and paid the price for us, right? What else does that brand tell us? He's resurrected. He's not there anymore. Think about this for a minute. Jesus could have come at any time on earth, but he chose a time where he would live as almost like a peasant, and he gave us a brand to remember. The greatest brand of all is that cross. It says in Isaiah 53 verse 2, it says, he grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain, like one from whom people hide their faces. He was despised, and we held him in low esteem. That's the brand.